Hey guys, Liquid Fire here. Thanks for joining me again tonight. So, we are going to take a look at Ultimate Hunting. So, they released their devlog 3 over the Christmas break, and I haven't had a chance to really get into it yet. So, this is the quick look at it. So, they did two things. They put out a little video where Raph kind of talks about some things and showcases a few pieces. We'll put the link to it in the description so you can pull it up and take a look at it. But we also have the written log, which has some pretty interesting information in it. So I wanted to take a look through that to begin with, and some of it is the same as what he actually talks about. So there's a lot of overlap. But I wanted to kind of go through and talk about some of the things that we see here, and he says in the video that I think kind of stands out pretty good for a few of these. So to kind of get started, let's talk about the sex size and trophy diversity. So one of the core pillars is diversity, he says, which is great. You're going to encounter males, females, and young, which is really big. Um, so whenever we are hunting in most games, and we'll just say Way of the Hunter, the Hunter Classic, and Hunting Simulator 2, just to kind of cover three that I'm fairly familiar with. We don't see herds that have the entire herd. In Way of the Hunter, you have the persistent herds, which is great, but you don't have youngs. You have 1 year olds, but they all look about the same. They may be a little bit smaller, but effectively, you don't have fawns if we're talking about deer. You don't have little kits if you're talking about any of the cats in game. So no cubs for the bears, things like that. So everything is fairly big and pretty much the same size. Now something here with Ultimate Hunting, they have made an emphasis to showcase that they are going to have young in game, and not just young as in okay they're smaller, but actual youngs, young coats. They look like baby piglets, for example, in the video. Um, there's been several different examples that they've shown showcasing the young. On this one, they kind of get into some of the differences using the crocodile here. So if we look at the picture, you can see you're looking at an 80 kilogram, 8 foot long. So that's not a baby, but compared to the 450 kilogram, 14.8 feet long, granddaddy over here, that's a big difference. And the good thing is, if you look at these, even with the Crocs here, you can see a significant difference in their structure, their size, and their coat. So even with these, the coats look totally different, which is really cool. And if you watch the video, you'll see there are several examples in the video as well where you really see a lot of differences. So, for example, right at the beginning, it shows the wild boar, and then you see all the little piglets, and it's not just one little piglet; it's like seven or something. There's a bunch of them there. So that's pretty cool. And we've seen the same thing with other animals. As they've showcased the game. Um, there's a shot in the savannah in the video where you see wildebeest and zebra, and you see young baby, whatever you call wildebeest, foal wildebeest maybe. Same thing with zebras. There's appears to be some baby zebra around. So I think that we're really supposed to take that they're doing it for all the animals. I don't think it's going to be one or two animals that have the young, and that's huge. That really makes a herd feel so much more real. So that's a big thing. And of course, when you look at the images, the graphics all look just stellar. They're amazing. Um, one of the things they talk about though is how they achieve the realistic scaling. So they're not just making things bigger. Like we said, they're changing the coats, the body structure. They're using the length weight ratio, what they call their LWR curve. to ensure that heavier animals look and feel heavier and bigger. So it's not just that they scaled it a little bit. I think they're trying to make them actually feel bigger in their shape and textures and everything, not just scale it up by 10% or something like that. So that's nice to see. The next piece in the written part is the shot reactions, and I don't think this is anything surprising to anybody who's been following anything about the game for a while. There are certainly some pretty extreme shot reactions. I think the baboon that gets shot in the spine and you see it crawling on the ground, it's completely real, and that's pretty freaking awesome to put in the game. It's not the first to do it. Yes, we've seen spine shots paralyze deer in game. Not anything new, but it's a great thing to have. And I think that we're from what he was saying, we're going to see different reactions based on the type of shot it is. So in the video, he kind of stumbled over his words, and I think that's where he was talking about kind of getting tongue-tied. But I think what they're saying is, if you, for example, here they say a shot to the stomach will cause different reactions than a precise lung or heart shot, and they want to replicate that. That's big. We've seen different examples of how hitting in the spine gives a unique reaction. So I think that they're really focusing a lot on the shot reaction, and that's great. And there's a video in the little written section that we've seen before. It's the kudu, how it runs whenever it gets hit and things like that. So you can jump in here and play it. It's nothing too stellar, but it's a good example of what things could look like. And they even talked about the baboon having the lower body paralysis. So yeah, that's a big thing. So that's cool. The next little section they talked about was the fur variations, and everybody wants as many rare furs as possible. There's no doubt about it. Everybody wants multiple rare furs for every animal in game. I'm part of everybody. I would love that. That's awesome. But they're kind of being upfront and realistic here. So they're starting with a limited range due to the fact that they're a small team. They don't have a ton of resources, they don't have a ton of developers, and they're being upfront about it. And that is big. One of the problems with Ultimate Hunting early on is Raph jumped out and started sharing stuff all over the place, and people were expecting things to happen very, very soon based on what we were hearing, what we were seeing, the stuff that was coming out. And then there was the talk about the trailer that just kept taking forever and ever and ever, and everybody was waiting, and people started getting mad and blah, blah, blah. So Raph has done a great job, in my opinion, of owning that, apologizing that he let it come out as early as it did. And now we're seeing a much more upfront version of Raph. So he's flat out saying, hey, look, we're going to have some unique fur variations, but it's going to be a limited amount because we just don't have the bandwidth to do it. And that's completely fair. It sure may be a little bit disappointing, but it's better than saying, yeah, we're going to do all these, all kinds of rares and furs that are going to be just amazing and blah, 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 and never see it. Being upfront with is great. So they would, in their dream, they would offer unique random patterns for piebald fur and animals who fur has unique patterns like zebras and giraffes. But I think what they're saying there is the piebalds are going to be pretty standard, at least to begin with. But that's okay. I mean, if there's a piebald and it has the same coat, that's better than no piebald. So we'll kind of see how that plays out. And so far, this is nothing new, guys. This is stuff that we've known, stuff that they've talked about before, and it's good to hear it reiterated. It's good to hear a little more detail on things like the length to weight ratio curve that they're going to try to use to make sure everything scales properly. This is all good stuff. But the next piece is something that's new to me. I won't say that it was never announced, but I've not seen this, and that's the Game Atlas. So, the Game Atlas is an animal focused encyclopedia that contains essential details, statistics, and practical tips about each creature in Ultimate Hunting. Sound familiar, anyone? Encyclopedia? Yeah, I think that this is certainly on that same type of path. Um, the interesting thing to me is that while yes, it has the encyclopedia information like we see in Wave of the Hunter, which I think is great. I love it. It makes it a really valued resource because you can learn, what the sleeping times are, what the eating times are. You can learn what the sizes are, what the maximum score is, things like that. That's all great. And it sounds like that's something that's going to be in this as well. Plus a bunch of more information. So there's going to be talk about the actual animal in, I think, in real life. So if we look at the example they have here with the African bush elephant, it talks about it being the largest land mammal, how it lives in the sub-Saharan Africa. But yeah, it talks about the real elephant. And then in tips, it gets into more of the game side of things. So hunting the tremendous African bush elephant requires careful preparation strategy. Okay, that's filler. Ensure you have a high caliber weapon and plenty of healing supplies, as elephants are powerful and resilient. We've seen that they attack in game already, so I'm assuming that's why they related that information. Sorry, my brain got stuck here for a minute. They're often found near water sources or grazing areas. That's kind of a key bit of information. So if this is real, then you can kind of take this and say, okay, we need to probably look around water or grazing areas, usually in herds. So that tells us that there's going to be a group of them, not just a single solo running around. So study their movements and try to isolate a target. Approach from downwind to avoid detection. Pretty normal information. Use natural cover like tall grasses or rocks to stay hidden. Yep, again, pretty normal things. During the encounter, aim for vital areas such as the head or lungs. Now, in most instances, hunters are told not to aim for the head. Elephants are different. So they really get into the details on how to hunt it. And be ready to evade charges by staying alert and using the environment to your advantage. So they're basically telling you, you are very likely to get charged when you're hunting the bush elephants. And that's a game thing, not just in real life. But I think this is actually getting into the game details. So that's really huge. So you've got the real world description and information, which is always cool to have. And then you have the tips for the game itself, telling you how to hunt it and things like that. So that's big. And if you look below the tips, the tracking skills and spotting skills, that may look familiar. To me, that looks a whole lot like the Hunter Classic, and I love to see that it's in here. So we've got actual data. So stats. We love stats. Most of us love stats anyway. And that's something that's irritated the devil out of me with Way of the Hunter. There just are not any stats. We know that they're tracking it. They're using it for some of the perks and things like that. There's no doubt in my mind that a lot of this information is tracked. And now they may not track how many times you've hunted them, how many you've spotted, things like that, but there's definitely data that's being tracked that's not being shared. And I would really like to see more of that stuff shared. I think that would be a boon for the game. Here, the Game Atlas is going to have that information directly in it. So you're going to have animal information, so you can learn key facts about the different species. Statistics, you can track how many times you've spotted, hunted, or even stuffed a particular animal. And I find it interesting that they are literally using the word stuffed instead of taxidermized. It seems weird to see it that way, but that's what we would call it in the real world. We stuffed a deer. We don't say we taxidermized a deer. We may say we had one mounted or something, but um, yeah. So I like the fact that they just went with stuffed. It just feels more natural. Um, so the next one, discover each animal's foraging hours, favorite foods, and scoring methods. So that little line tells us a lot more than there's just information in the atlas. We know now, based on this, that there's going to be times that they're doing different things. Now, I don't know what it's going to look like in game yet. I don't know how scripted it's going to be or scripted it's going to feel, but it's certainly interesting to see for sure that there are going to be need zones effectively, foraging hours. So they're going to have to go someplace to forage. They're going to have to go someplace to drink. They're probably going to go someplace to rest. I mean, that's pretty normal. That's what animals do. They eat, drink, and sleep. It's not like they have a job to go to. So I think that depending on how detailed this is, this could be really huge information in game. The favorite foods. I find that one really interesting. So I wonder if that's referring to baiting animals, or if there's going to be different areas on the map that happen to have different types of food available. So maybe a deer that really likes clover, maybe there's a food plot of clover or something like that. I don't know how that plays in yet, but that's interesting to see favorite foods as something that's listed. And then scoring methods. So I hope that they actually use real scoring methods and kind of break down, kind of like Classic did, whenever you shoot something with the BNC chart. So we'll see, but that's all good stuff to hear. Personal record, keep a record of your own achievements and milestones. So all of this to me is nice. I'm curious to see how detailed it is versus kind of how bland or high level it is. But that's big stuff. Now, again, we're reading into a lot of things based on just a little bit of information, and we certainly don't have the full perspective of everything that they're looking to do in game yet. And the reality is, just because they're saying they're going to do this, we don't know how that turns out in game. They're going to have baby animals, and you're not supposed to shoot them. You'll eventually be fined or something. How does that really play out in game? Is it something that is fun? Is it annoying? Do they just run and get in the way? I mean, there's so many different pieces of the puzzle that we just won't know about until we get into game. So I think that it's great to see a lot of these pieces, but until we truly see what they look like in game, I think that we have to be fairly reserved and not put too much into assuming how things are going to play out. Now, I do want to jump out of the written part and to a piece in the video itself. And for this, I'm actually just going to play the video. So this is at the end of the video that Raph shared. After the main information, this little piece plays, and I'm just going to let it play through and not say a word until it finishes. All right, so I don't think I need to say a whole lot. I'm pretty sure everybody saw the snow. And if you look at the way it kind of starts out, you get the airplane flying over, and you're in a green environment, and then all of a sudden it turns into a snowstorm. That's weather. That's snow, not rain. So that's weather, which is great to see that. But when they cut to the actual storm, when they're in the truck carrying the presents in the tree, the snow on the ground just looks so good. It's not that big, deep, knee deep, thick snow like, say, White in Classic. It's not that type of snow. This looks like it snowed for a few hours and there's snow on the ground. Now, one thing that I did notice that bothered me a little bit, I have to say, is there weren't any tracks underneath the truck where it was driving through the snow. You feel like you would have those really dark tracks where it was left. And again, this is early, so there could be changes. Or yeah, maybe this was just for fun for Christmas. Who knows? But the snow itself, yeah, I mean, it was kind of a blinding snow. A foggy snow, maybe, is a better way to say it. So I don't think the snow in the air and the ambience of that part looked great, but I do think the snow on the ground looked amazing. Now, depending on how tracks work, depending on how all the different elements play together, that could be really, really cool. But to see them put in at least this much effort to get things covered and to look great, maybe it's all UE5. I don't know. I haven't played with UE5, so I'm not the one to say, yeah, that's just a simple feature of UE5. You flip it on and it gives you snow. If it is, kudos, that's great. The more work you can take off of a small dev team by having tools built in that do stuff like this, the better. And to be honest, I do assume that a lot of this is built into UE5 and they're just making some adjustments to get it to look the way they want. But does it matter where it comes from? To me, no, it really doesn't. It looks great. Again, I don't think it looks great falling. The whole foggy snow, I guess you could call it. I don't like the look of that. But you take that aspect of it out, and then yeah, I think it looks great. The way it's on the ground, the way it's on the rocks, it builds up over the grass and stuff. So I think that's a really great look. Again, everything in the game, generally speaking, seems to be very, very pretty. What I find interesting, and I'm going to say a little concerning, is some of it feels almost photorealistic, and then other parts feel more like an actual game rendering. So, like in the video, it starts out with the elk. That feels like a game rendering, and it's a nice looking elk, but it's not photorealistic. You can tell, okay, that's a game elk, especially the females in the back left. The scene itself looks nice. There's the birds flying through, but it doesn't feel like they're trying to emulate a photo. It just looks nice. Same thing with the pigs and the piglets and all that. There's no confusing that with realism. It's fake. It's nice looking, but it's certainly fake. But then you cut to the alligators, or crocodiles rather, and it's like it's a photorealistic render of a crocodile. And the trees have that photorealistic feel in places, especially in the left. Um, so parts of it feel much, much sharper, and maybe that's part of the lighting. Maybe it's just a coincidence that it happens to look the way it does. It just things may have just fallen together in just the right way to get that type of look. What I'm concerned with is it feels very different when you look at the like the savannah overall versus the crocodile. And it's the same thing, the lion. We saw the image of the lion that just looked just great, but it doesn't feel like the rest of the game. So I don't know what's going on and why some of it feels so different. And it may just be just because of the type of textures, the particular lighting, the scene itself. But here I'll put these two side by side, and yeah, they both look nice. They do, but they feel so significantly different. I don't know. Something just feels weird about that. So that's something that's still kind of bothering me as we get different qualities depending on what they're doing. And I know it may be something to do with when it was recorded and how it was recorded, all that stuff. Yeah, I get that. So I don't know. It's just something to kind of keep my eyes on, to be aware of. But all of that aside, I think the game looks great. What we're seeing now, I'm more interested in seeing some actual gameplay. We did see a little bit with the trailer or whatever. I would like to see a little bit of real gameplay. Yeah, 5 minutes. Go hunt a couple, maybe three different animals. Um, just enough to showcase what the game really looks like, what shooting feels like, things like that. That's what I would like to see next. The devlogs are cool. They're great. I love seeing the information. We love seeing Raph's passion. There is absolutely no doubt that he's excited about the game and is championing the game. And certainly, um, there is a lot of interest of his in the game, and that's great. But I'd like to see a little more of the game itself. We've seen a lot of scenes. We've seen a lot of animals staged in places. We've seen things like that. Um, I would really like to see even a couple short videos, some hunting, some actual gameplay. You walk out on a hill, there's some deer down on the bottom. You walk down, you stalk, whatever. You get the shot, you go, you claim them. I would love to see what the game feels like, not just what it may look like. So that's something that I'm really looking forward to. And hopefully we see more and more of that as we get closer to the release date. So we'll see. Anyway, I think I've rambled on long enough on this one. Again, very excited. We're seeing a lot of things that that really showcase that they're listening to what the players want. When you look at the components that we're aware of, it it feels like they're going in and picking out the best parts out of the games that people have wanted, and that's awesome. If the game plays well and has the features that people love out of the other games, man, that's a lot. That may be enough to put some serious dents into some player bases on some other games. Um, so I'm excited to see what it becomes. Who knows? We'll have to wait until we to get something to play. Which yeah, it sounds like we're probably looking at another year or two before we see something we can actually get our hands on and play. But yeah, if it takes a little bit of time, it takes a little bit of time. It is what it is. So we'll see. Anyway, we're going to wrap this one up. I just wanted to share this with you guys. Of course, I will put the links to the video and to the devlog itself, of course, in the descriptions. So you guys go check it out, read through it, watch the videos. There's some interesting pieces there. It's not a super long one, but yeah, there's some interesting pieces. I think we covered everything that they brought up in the video. We talked about the size and sex, and of course the trophies are going to be different. I don't think there's any point in really getting into that. We should know that. We talked about the shot reactions, each animal having its own unique look. Um, the way I understood it, it was including fur, but I think there may be some confusion there because they turn around and say that we can't really do that for like piebalds. So I'm not going to jump and say everything's going to be unique at this point until I hear something and see something that's 100% definitive. And even if they're not, that's not the end of the world. Most animals look very, very similar. So it's not the end of the world if they're not all completely unique. If there are some unique ones or some uniquities within some of them, yeah, that's fine. It's a small team, guys. It's not. 150 people working on a game. It's not 50 people working on a game. It's not 35. It's a few people working on a game. So seeing anything to be unique is a win. So anyway, let's wrap this up. We'll catch up next time they drop something else for us to take a look at. So guys, y'all have a great night. God bless and happy hunting.